Hello YouTubers, this is a Fortis Core review of Overwatch. I'm Frosthaven.
My name is the Chicken Man. Hello.
Of course, the game in the background is Overwatch, so we're just going to jump right on into it and go over some details about the game. Now, I don't know how many of you knew about this, but Blizzard for the longest time had a secret Project Titan. Do you remember that, Chicken?
I do remember Project Titan. Something about it, a futuristic MMO made by Blizzard. I was super stoked about it, and I think it was supposed to be released back in 2012 or something like that, but it got shelved and everyone was sad.
Project Titan, from what I remember from way back in the day, was supposed to be like a first-person shooter MMO. At least that's what one of the rumors were. And the game was in development for, I want to say, 7 years or so. They completely scrapped it and used the lessons they learned from that failed project to create from the ashes, like a phoenix, Overwatch.
Personally, I have no problems with that whatsoever. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, and bear with me here, but I would not be surprised if the Overwatch was actually a lore piece that was tied into Project Titan, and they just liked it so much that they decided to give it its own game.
Overwatch is a first-person shooter, team-based strategy game developed by Blizzard. A lot of people are drawing comparisons to Team Fortress 2. Have you ever played Team Fortress 2, Chicken?
I played so much Team Fortress 2 back when it was released with the orange box. Oh, it was so good. Hats weren't in the game and life was fantastic.
You love hats, don't you?
No, I don't. I mean, they were cool at first. I was like, oh man, super rare drop percent chance for hats. I really want the camera beard because I main spy and it looks awesome. And then I never got it for a very long time. But now I have a vintage camera beard and that's kind of cool.
I gotta be honest, I kind of dropped out of Team Fortress 2 when they started having all of the extra vanity items and hats that gave you extra bonuses. I felt that was really weird. That's kind of when I quit playing, but nevertheless, a lot of people are obviously going to be drawing the comparison between Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Yes, both are class-based shooters. Yes, Overwatch definitely took Halo, Capture the Point, that kind of a gameplay style, and that's also what TF2 runs on, primarily. I believe they said they weren't going originally to do a Capture the Flag. It just wouldn't work well for Overwatch, and I can definitely see that being a thing. You know, there would just be tracers everywhere. However, Capture the Flag is a staple in Team Fortress 2 because their classes work so well together. You can say the same for Overwatch, of course. There's 12 of them right now, I believe.
Yeah, there's currently 12, and they've talked about adding more as time goes on. In fact, in one of the cinematic shorts, the one where Winston is sitting on a computer, if you freeze frame the video, there's several pictures that come up alongside the characters that we have in the game right now. So there's a lot of speculation on who they might be and if they're going to be added to the game. I feel like Team Fortress 2's class setup is fairly well balanced. I feel like Overwatch takes the class dynamic to the extreme.
No, it definitely does. I mean, they give them skills and, you know, all that sort of stuff. One of the big selling points, I guess, of Team Fortress 2 right now is how much you can customize the class that you're using. So, for instance, you could be a demo man, or you could run at people with a giant sword and try and decapitate them.
I was browsing around the forums, and a lot of people that I've asked on the forums and in person, their biggest complaint about Overwatch is that the characters are so specialized, because it puts you in this position where you have to know how to play the majority of the characters in order to be competitive in any given game, because the whole point of Overwatch is to counter your enemy's strategy by changing out your character, and you do that constantly throughout the match. And personally, that's something I love, but a lot of people don't like that, and I wonder if it's not people coming from Team Fortress 2 expecting to have that one character can do it all depending on how you build them mentality.
Blizzard creating Overwatch with that kind of a mindset is both a good idea and a bad idea on their part. I understand where they're going with it, but a lot of people, like just in general, are going to pick the character that they like the most and play that. People who aren't really looking to play competitively are going to pick the character they find the most fun and just stick with them the entire time. I can understand that, you know, because every other shooter all work in the same way. You pick your character, and then 9 times out of 10, you're stuck with that character throughout the entirety of the game that you're playing. I love Soldier 76. He's just, generally the character that I enjoy the most.
Well, that's something to note as well. There are a lot of characters in the game that can fit into almost any team comp, whereas there are some more specialized ones. You take your Soldier 76, for instance. I can't imagine a team comp where Soldier 76 would necessarily be a bad pick. However, I can imagine team comps where something like a Bastion or a Mercy would be a terrible pick. So they do have one-size-fits-all picks, and they also have very niche picks, and that's when you get into the diversity that they do have. It is obviously comparable to Team Fortress 2 in many aspects, but it is going in a slightly different design direction. I wanted to touch on picking one character and riding with it, or, as the case in Overwatch, kind of viewing every game as a chessboard and picking the character that's best for any situation as you go. With that being one of the more primal complaints, I really like this chessboard approach. I really, really do. Here's the thing. If they were to make it where every character can do anything all game and you never had to switch, I don't know that I would buy the game, because there are so many games out there that already offer that. And another point as well, if you look at the other more popular genre out there right now, which is MOBAs, one of the big problems you run into with MOBAs in both casual and competitive scene is that games can be decided, and you as a huge League of Legends player know this, games can be decided at character select. The enemy team might have a healer, your team won't, and you're at a severe disadvantage. Well, with Overwatch, you don't run into that, because if you go into the game, the enemy team has a healer and you don't, you say, well, hold on, let me just get a healer to make this more fair. And so I view that as a positive, and I absolutely love it for it, and that's why I got the game. Let's get into some of the story and lore, because that's also another big topic going around the Overwatch stratosphere right now, is how the game, a lot of people claim the game is lacking a lot of story and lore. However, I know that they're doing a lot outside of the game with cinematic shorts and comics. How do you feel about that?
Do you remember back when Warcraft just started out, and there were orcs and there were humans, and there was not much else? Because if you do, then you'll remember that they created, 2 more games? As well as an entire MMO surrounding the subject of Warcraft. So while Warcraft 1 may not have started out with a lot of lore, it still had, that basic background of what they wanted to do, just like Overwatch has the basic background of what they want to do, and Blizzard's going to nurture that. Like, you can already see all these cinematics being produced. You can see these little bits and pieces within the maps relating to the game's lore and just telling you a little bit about what's going on. For instance, during the Hollywood map, while you're pushing the cart, there's that robot out there, and he's not too impressed with humans and human actors and a quota.
It does remind me, there were a couple of developers, and it's kind of becoming this overarching theme in the gaming industry, that story doesn't matter. There were some developers from Riot Games, for instance. I don't know if you remember reading any articles about it. That they said...
Yes, I remember Riot Games, and lore doesn't matter.
Right, lore doesn't matter. What matters is creating interesting characters and giving them a reason to be where they are, which, if you look at any MOBA, for the most part, aside from Heroes of the Storm, where every character has a story that they came from initially, they always have an excuse to be there without really having a deep backstory. And that's kind of where the gaming industry has gone. And so it worried me that games are just going to completely drop lore to the wayside. Now, the thing about the way Blizzard is approaching their story for Overwatch, I actually like. Because if there's anything Blizzard has a strength in, it's in CGI. They always have. Even if you look back at the Warcraft days, with, for instance, Warcraft 3, in their CGI cutscenes, they rendered hair follicles one at a time on Arthas, and that was something that was unheard of at the time. They've always been bleeding edge, and so what I'm seeing them doing is they're removing a lot of the lore from the game to keep the game about the game and the game alone, but they're still providing lore to people like myself through these comics and these cinematics, which some people may see it as removing from the game, but I actually see that as Blizzard playing to their strength.
I have no problem with companies who are trying to make games that are played for fun, such as, well, not for fun, but like games meant to be played with multiple people that don't focus heavily on story. Like, for instance, Bastion without the lore would upset me because it's a completely story-driven game. However, games like League of Legends and Overwatch are not story-driven games. They are player versus player environments where a story is nice, but you don't need the story in the game in order to make the game fun.
Now, they did go out of their way, and they did actually include nods in Overwatch to the story, which is rewarding if you've done any reading on the story. If you're interested in the lore, they have these nods in the way that the characters interact with themselves. Like, I can't remember the exact phrase, but one of the characters will mention to Farah something about her mother, and Farah responds, "Oh, you don't know my mother then." And Farah's mother was part of the original Overwatch strike team. And so they have all these little throwbacks and nods, just like the robot and the graffiti you mentioned earlier. So they do these tie-ins, and I think that's another one of Blizzard's strengths. If you look at even the multitude of games that they have, they do so many tie-ins just between their games. And so this is like a natural extension to that.
The very first character interaction that I noticed was between Widowmaker and Tracer, because I had seen that brief cinematic talking, or well, not talking, but displaying how Widowmaker and her partner attempted to get into a museum, I believe it was. It's been a while, but Tracer was there to stop them, and I know Widowmaker and Tracer have kind of a hate tiny bit of love relationship going on between them, and they definitely show that within the game, and I think that's pretty cool. These nods to lore that happens outside of the game being placed in the game.
I want to actually look at the representation on this cast of characters in the initial lineup for Overwatch on launch. I feel like they've got it. They've got something in there for everyone. Some may argue that it's stereotyped, and in some ways, I guess you could say that. My opinion on that, though, is so many people want to be represented in games. They want characters that represent them and their specific way of life, that it's almost hard to avoid the stereotype.
They definitely have a character for everyone. Maybe not playstyle-wise, but their cast of characters is extremely diverse. Like, they have from German to Swedish to British to African to, you know, freedom, all-purpose American fireman.
Egyptian.
Yeah, that's African. But also they have Symmetra, too. But yeah, Symmetra, Farah, you have your general Asians, Genji, and the one that actually looks Asian, Hanzo. And then, of course, Reinhardt is German, Mercy is Swedish, Winston is Monkey. So your animals are also not being discriminated against in Overwatch.
Now, let's talk about the graphics of this game, because honestly, I feel like the graphics of this game are beautiful.
They are definitely beautiful. I love them. 10 out of 10. Very cartoony, just like Team Fortress 2, just like League of Legends. That's actually why I play the games over other games, is because I prefer the art style more than anything else. It's like comparing League's art style to the art style of Dota 2. If you were to compare Overwatch's art style to a game like Call of Duty. And I'm totally down for the more cartoony look, because not only does it generally look better in my opinion, but it also ages way, way superior to a game that tries to go for a realistic approach.
Well, that's true, and that's the same approach they took with World of Warcraft, was to give it more of this stylized, timeless art form that could stand the test of the ages, which they've received updates, of course, in World of Warcraft throughout time. But a lot of those art assets, they've been around for 8-9 years. I feel like the readability of the game is great, having the red outline around enemies, blue around your own teammates. I do wonder about the clarity of some of the characters when you take into account skins. However, I wonder how easy it's going to be to tell if that's a McCree around the corner or if it's another character that happens to have a skin with a hat and a cape.
I actually think they've done pretty good so far in terms of recognizability when you're looking at general character looks. For instance, you might have like a Genji with a hat, which would be weird because I don't think they would ever give Genji a hat. But hey, if you had a Genji with a hat, you would definitely be able to tell it was a Genji with a hat instead of a McCree. I mean, it's not only the way that the characters look, but it's also the way the characters are built.
Their posture.
Yeah, and the way they sound.
I definitely think that this game is focused more around the team play experience with friends, which is, I would highly recommend that if you play this game, that's the way you go in. And like you said with solo queue, don't expect much. Expect to have disasters in solo queue. It's just the nature of the business. It's the way it is in MOBAs. It's the way it's going to be.
Straight up, solo queue, team queue, doesn't matter. I had a blast. I went in with the expectation that not everything was going to go my way, that I was going to have a lot of problems, and admittedly, I did have a couple problems. There were a couple games where I got a little frustrated at because we couldn't win, but in the end, I still enjoyed every single game. It was still a hell of a lot of fun. I definitely recommend the game for anyone who is a fan of class-based or team-oriented shooters.
And then for my rating, I would probably give it an approach with caution. If you are like me and you go into solo queue hoping to have teams that work with you, it will be a very, very frustrating experience. However, if you are into team play and have even just one or two friends to queue up with, I think that this will be one of the most enjoyable first-person shooter experiences that the gaming industry has had in a very long time. And I see Overwatch as being a game to have support for many years to come.
I highly recommend playing Soldier 76 and getting a pocket mercy to just damage boost you. It's a lot of fun.
Also, pretty good counter to Bastion if you're good at peek shots. So there you have it. That was Fortis Core's talk on Overwatch as of the last open beta. The game will be out on the 24th. Feel free to check out our website, fortiscoregaming.com, for more news, articles, videos, reviews, podcasts, and more. I'm Frosthaven.
I am still a chicken wrap. Hello.
And we will see you next time.